Hello everyone, God bless you. Welcome back to Traveler of the Wood. It's time for another Q&A video, and if you're unfamiliar with this format, basically what I do is about once a month or so I make a post asking for people's questions. And I usually post this kind of around social media, and I collect all the questions and make a video like this where I go through and answer them. I have quite a few questions this time, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into these. The first question that I have here is one that I get asked pretty much every time. It's always some variant of this. But the first question is, do you have any predictions regarding the West? Like, where are we going from here? I tend to put this question first whenever I get this because I want to be able to go back and look at how my answer kind of changes over time. Because I feel like with the way things are rapidly happening in this realm, that I guess my predictions do kind of change. Although I'm not one to make predictions, really. I don't like making predictions. I'm not a person that can see into the future. So I'll just put it that way. But obviously, especially now with the recent events of this week, I foresee voluntary segregation being a thing that is about to happen, like really, really fast. How that's going to play out, I'm not sure. I would hope that it's going to be the peaceful version of this, where people voluntarily segregate based on either ideology, based on race, based on whatever, so we don't have a conflict involved. But due to the nature of the events of this week, it just feels like the war drums are beating, and I'm not happy about that, because there's a lot of people that feel really gung-ho about, oh yeah, we'll have our civil war and everything's going to be fine after that. That will make things so much worse for everyone, and I feel like there's a lot of people that just don't really realize that that's a problem. The kind of upside to all of this is that I'm also seeing this rejection of the modern, you could say, the modern scientism, and people are starting to reach toward the divine again. And as people do that, I think you are going to see people starting to fill this God-shaped hole in their soul with the divine, with God. And that will ease a lot of people's, you could say, earthly burdens. It's not going to fix everything, but it will make people hopefully better. But, you know, you see people do this sometimes, and a lot of, especially new converts to things like Christianity and to Islam and even to paganism in some ways, they have this really enhanced zeal for their newfound religious belief. And a lot of people do try to wield that as a weapon. And I don't think that's a good thing. But usually when people do that, that's pretty short-lived, because once they actually settle into their new religious framework, they realize they don't have time to start any holy crusades. Am I saying that's out of the question? You know, I don't know. But I think people will really start to get heavily involved in some sort of religious framework. Because, you know, in times like this, when everything's getting so crazy, I think that's the really only option for a lot of people, because that's when you're at rock bottom, and that's when the only way you can look is up and toward the divine. So, you know, there's kind of this ending of nihilism through all of this, because people are realizing if you have no hope for the future, there's no progress. Nothing happens. Everything just starts to stagnate, and things just get worse and worse and deteriorate over time. So I don't know. That's kind of what I see, at least currently. Is my opinions Are my opinions on that going to change at some point? Probably, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, next question. What music do you listen to? So, thank you for a lighthearted question, because a lot of these are not that lighthearted. I'm a big fan of Dungeon Synth. If you've never heard of Dungeon Synth, it's very lo-fi, medievally sounding stuff. I'm big into early music, and a lot of my personal study in music has been through early music, medieval era music. And I love that kind of music. That's kind of primarily what I listen to, but I do listen to some Dungeon Synth because it's beautiful. And I really enjoy a lot of the bands that are out there creating these kind of medieval fantasy worlds through their albums. That's always cool. I love prog rock. I like bands like Yes, Gentle Giant, King Crimson, stuff like that. I know you've probably seen some of my band shirts that I wear while I'm making these videos. But I love classical. I love jazz. I mean, that's ultimately kind of my spectrum of listening, but I do listen to some things outside of that occasionally. But thank you for the question. Next question. Who are you? Why should I care about what you have to say? So in the last 28 days or so, I've had 34 new subscribers. And firstly, I want to welcome all of you. I'm very thankful that you all are here. And I really value your input on my channel. And I value the fact that you decide to follow my channel. That's really, really cool. Why should you care what I have to say? You shouldn't. I'm just another voice in the kind of endless sea of ideas. And a lot of my takes are weird and fringe enough that they're not really conducive to making friends. So I would not recommend you, quote, listen to me per se. But I do make these videos just to get my own ideas out there. So if you like them or if you resonate with them, I am more than happy to hear from you if you like what they are. But you asked who I am. I'm a guy that lives in the Midwest who's married to a beautiful wife who has stage 4 breast cancer. And a lot of my personal study and work has been on trying to define reality or identify where I am in reality, I guess you could say. So I spend a lot of time trying to make these kind of linguistic models for things that are unlanguageable, if that makes sense. I'm kind of a perpetual student of demonology. I've done a lot of research and study in that field, also in theology, also in philosophy. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do all day, is just read and write and think. So that's kind of, I don't know, that's, I guess, who I am. If you're wondering what I do for work, I do work in the film and music industry. I compose music for video games occasionally, and work in post-production for film. And I make some of my own movies also, which I kind of keep this channel separate from my work life for obvious reasons. But at some point, they're all going to fuse together. So I'm sure someday you guys will see parts of some of the movies I've worked on, or things like that. But yeah, that's who I am. And this is what I do, is just make this YouTube channel. That's at least what I've been doing for a couple years now. Next question. Where has the lore gone? How can we bring back lore? This is such a cool question. In modern times, a lot of lore is found in video games. And there are film franchises that have lore, extensive lore, but most of the time those are based off of old literature, like Lord of the Rings, for instance. But as far as lore goes, there are a few video games that have just intense, heavy lore. And I think that's really special. I am in no way a gamer, which is ironic because I like to make music for video games. But the only game I've ever played like regularly and still play on occasion is a game called World of Warcraft. And the reason I love that game so much is the just massive, like thousands of years long lore that is in that game. And I think that's really cool, but at the same time, that's entertainment lore. We are kind of removed from what I call real lore. And real lore is our amazing stories and our amazing history. I mean, the Bible obviously is filled with insane amounts of lore. Each race has their own extensive lore. It's really important, and we're really removed from it, and that's a shame because we need... Lore is something that gives us a sense of purpose and meaning. And yeah, I could talk about this actually for a long time, but the reintroduction into, I guess, what I'm calling the reenchantment renaissance is going to promote people to explore their own family's lore and maybe even write new lore as time progresses. We're living through these amazing lore-producing times right now, and our children will want to hear stories from this era and what we're doing. So having lore for your family is really important, and passing that on to your children is also really important. I've been meaning to make a separate video on this, and I haven't yet, but I feel like every Western family needs a family sword. And I know that sounds silly, but a sword is a very multi-dimensional symbolic item. And having a having a sword that you can pass down through generations, that sword, whether it's used or not, is going to just start developing lore and have stories behind it about how it was given to you. And every young boy that is becoming a man needs to be handed a sword at some point in his life. I really feel strongly about this. So that is, I guess, what I think about that. This whole reenchantment renaissance is going to stimulate lore coming back. That's where I think it's going to come back. So, thirsty. My air conditioner is out in my car right now, and that's a whole long story that I want to make a video on at some point too, because I have a fairly new car and the air conditioner should not go out, and it's a very small problem that needs to be fixed, but no one will fix it without doing a bunch of expensive other things. So right now I'm just going without it. Next question. What is your favorite book in the Bible? What book is the most psychedelic? Wow. My answer is not that exciting, I don't think. My favorite books, I don't have a favorite book, but my favorite books in the Bible are Genesis and Revelation, because that's kind of the beginning and end, the Alpha, the Omega. Incredibly amazing books with incredibly amazing storytelling. The book of Job is the book that I maybe resonate with the most. And I think a lot of people that have gone through difficult times in their life really resonate with the book of Job. As far as the Gospels go, the Gospel of John is the one that I like to read the most. And the book of Jude is a really interesting book too. And well, there's so many books in the Bible that are cool. But those are kind of my favorites, I guess you could say. Now, as far as the most psychedelic, that's kind of an interesting framing. You really have to say Revelation. There is so much symbology, so much lore, so much visual imagery in the book of Revelation. I really think that that is the most psychedelic book, if I had to say that. Okay, next. What do you wrestle with? Man. That's a really good question. And I don't even know if I can pin it down what I wrestle with. I wrestle with a lot. As a man living in a very pornographic society, I wrestle with lust, and I think most men wrestle with that. I really wrestle with Christianity, and I think a lot of people don't understand how important it is to wrestle with your religious framework. If you just believe it wholeheartedly and blindly, you're not going to get much out of it. But if you wrestle with it and really have to figure out how you fit into it, that's going to make your relationship with that religious framework so much deeper. And I wrestle with Christianity a lot because as a white person of European descent, I am very drawn to paganism. I think paganism has a lot of history that has been suppressed and abandoned, and it speaks to white Europeans on a genetic level. And yeah, that's something I wrestle with, So there's so much more that I wrestle with, though. I mean, some days are just a struggle because I have so many things I want to do with my life, and I just don't feel like I'm good enough to try to achieve these things. And it's a struggle to constantly keep yourself motivated and everything. So yeah, there's a lot of things I wrestle with. It was a great question, though. Thank you. Next question. We are homeschooling our children and we want to teach them the biblical stories. Any advice for us? I really would love to homeschool my two stepkids, but there's things in place that are preventing that from happening. So I don't have the experience of homeschooling to really tell you that. Now, I was homeschooled for a few years in my upbringing, and it wasn't really I grew up in a Christian household, but it wasn't like a biblical homeschool curriculum, I guess you should say. But really, the Bible it's assembled in order of digestibility, I think. And it kind of travels an arc through human understanding as they grow up. So I think that the Old Testament and early books have a lot of digestible stories and lessons for young children. And as these children get older and you start getting into the New Testament, the Gospels, have a lot of deeper life wisdom involved. And then as you get even older, say you're, older teenager, you'll be able to at least begin unpacking some of the writings of Paul, and then going further into the symbolism and imagery of the later books and into Revelation. So I really think that you can teach the Bible throughout school age the school age trajectory. And you can really just do it in order. I mean, that's how I would do it, I guess, if I was doing it. But don't listen to me. There's people that are way more educated on that than me. Okay, next one. What do you think of the trad movement? Do you believe in gender roles, and should women be trad wives? So I was very involved, 5-6 years ago in the trad movement idea. But I think that movement got really taken over by two different types of people. It got taken over by men who think women should be their domestic slave. Men that kind of fetishize this 1950s type of lifestyle. And it's also been taken over by fetishists who fetishize this lifestyle. And, there's a lot of people who are into the kink of it and have kinkified normal gender interaction. And I think that really sucks because the movement, when it started, was not based on that. It was based on, like, how can we make healthy families and raise healthy children in environments where they have good examples. And you're not going to be raising children in an environment of good examples if you're kinkifying everything. That's very disturbing that some people feel like that's going to be the thing. And, it's like some of these groups that I've seen where there's like trad people in there trying to meet each other or whatever. I mean, some of these women are like, I want to be a breeding slave, and just all this weird stuff. And it's like, you guys are completely missing the mark on what the trad movement is. But do I believe in gender roles? Absolutely, I believe in gender roles. We are different genders. We have different strengths and weaknesses. And I consider myself a trad person in the medieval sense, where both parties use their strengths to work and build something great and make their community better, make their family better. All of this kind of stuff fractals out. But yeah, I've started to hate the word trad because it's got that kinkified subtext to it or something, and I hate that that's become that. But should women be trad wives? It's like, okay, not in the fetish sense, no, they shouldn't be trad wives. But should women embrace their gender roles, and should they focus on home and family? Yeah, absolutely, I think they should. And of course, in modernity, most people cannot do life on a single income. And that's by design. Obviously, they want women in the workplace, and they want to turn women into men by doing this kind of thing. And it's a huge problem. So yeah, women need to do their best to avoid the workforce at all costs. And men need to do their best to establish companies, establish economies, establish systems that are going to reward people for having families, essentially. And the first way you can do that is by paying men a lot more than they're getting paid right now. But that goes into a whole other thing that I am not an economist. I can't really figure all that stuff out. But yeah, that was a cool question. Thank you for asking. Next question. In your studies of demonology, have you learned about demonic possession and exorcism? If so, will you make a video about it? Do you have any book recommendations? I go back and forth on this because a lot of people joined my channel because they saw some of my shorts where I'm talking a little bit about demonology. As I said in one of those videos, the more you study demons, the the more you're going to see demons. And the more you see demons, the more they're going to see you. And that makes your life very difficult if you start doing that. So I go back and forth on, should I like lean into that more on the channel, or should I just make like one big video and just have that be the video? I'm still deciding what to do on that. But yes, I have read about exorcism. I don't know about Protestantism. I don't even know if Protestants even believe in demons anymore. I've heard some commentary from some Protestants where they're essentially like, oh, well, that part of the Bible is just symbolic. And it's like, gosh, you guys are so screwed up. I know Orthodox and Catholic exorcists actually do training together, and they do that at the Vatican. And it's not easy to become an exorcist. And I've been asked before in the past, you know, if I feel like I could exorcise a demon. I don't think I can. I'll put it that way. It's so complicated, and it doesn't work like the movies. You know, it's not like some guy standing over you with a cross, like speaking in Latin and eyes rolling back in the head and someone flailing about on a bed. Like it is, that's a very Hollywood version of that, and it doesn't work like that at all. It usually takes a long time. It's over months, and you only visit an exorcist if everything else has been exhausted to its maximum potential. Like you've gone to therapy, you've completely ruled out that it's not a mental issue or psychological issue. You've prayed, you've done church, you've talked to priests, you've talked to, you know, all sorts of people, family members, and just exercised every single thing that you could do. And if none of that works, then you could possibly suggest that someone is demonically possessed. But sometimes demonic possession is very visible in someone, and you can see it in the way they act. And yeah, I need to make a whole video about it. You are right, I should make a video about it. But as far as book recommendations, I mean, it depends on what you're wanting to look at. I've recommended Merrill Unger before. His books are really cool, and it's a good introduction into how a Christian should view demons. So in that way, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's mild, but it's a good introduction, starting point. But after you look at that for a little while, you start getting into older texts. And by older texts, I mean like, you know, Renaissance and even earlier into medieval texts that are written in Latin, and finding translations are really hard. And yeah, it's a big deal. And there's a lot of literature on it, but it's all very esoteric and weird and hard to find. And yeah, so if you open that can of worms, be prepared to be frustrated for a long time, because you're not going to find exactly what you're looking for quickly. But yeah, I do need to make a video about it, so I might try to work on that at some point. Next question. What is the difference between race, realism, and racism? I made a short about that. You should check it out. But essentially what I said was, racism is just hating somebody for the color of their skin, specifically. And race realism is realizing that there are different races. And this whole idea of we're all one and we're all going to get along is not real. It's not based in reality. And different races are different. And some have strengths, some have weaknesses. And to expect a multicultural society to get along is insane. And I don't know why we're still trying to do this when there's been proof time and time again that it's not the case. Next question. I'm glad to see you're back making videos again. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I followed your stuff in the RPC days. Whoa. And the early days of this channel. Do you have plans for buying land? Do you still have plans for buying land? And if so, can I live there? Also, have you seen the big Lez Show? Okay, so for a little context, the RPC days he's referring to, I guess I think you're a he, is referring to a podcast that I did a really, really long time ago. And I can't believe someone has followed me this far. So that's amazing. I've changed a lot, as I'm sure you've noticed. Wow. So do I still have plans for buying land? Of course I do. What I've wanting to do with the land has kind of changed, especially since the RPC days. I do want to make some sort of spiritual retreat center or something at some point, but I don't know how far out that's going to be. The first thing I want to focus on is buying land for myself, and I want to build my castle upon it and live among creation. So that's what I'm really working on. If you want to live there, I will probably, if I get a big enough piece of land and start doing some farming on it, I am going to try to make a thing where people who are incredibly vetted can come stay on the land and trade room and board for farm labor. But that's a long time in the future. And also the big Lez Show. Yes, I've seen the big Lez Show. I only recently found it, and my wife and I pretty much binged the whole thing, and it's incredible. And it's a very psychedelic show. If you've never seen the big Lez Show, I would recommend it. A guy in Australia animates and made this show, or made this show in Microsoft Paint, and it's really good. It's really good. All right, next question. I suffer with incredible anxiety. When I see the state of the world, I almost can't handle it. I look around and see people who don't seem bothered. What can I do? I know what it's like to have anxiety, and I know what it's like to see the world falling apart, because obviously everyone, I think, is in that boat right now. The power of prayer can not be understated, and I know some people, maybe people that follow the channel, disagree with that. If you look at prayer, meditation, and contemplation, all three of those things are important. Because prayer is you reaching out to the divine and asking for guidance, asking for help, asking for your anxiety to be quelled. Meditation is kind of like a way to clear the mind, to not think about anything, to focus on ridding yourself of all of these kind of cyclical thoughts that create anxiety. Because that's what anxiety is you start thinking what if, and it just starts this cycle. And contemplation is processing things. That's when you are actually thinking about things. And all of this is important. All of these are very important for keeping a stable grasp on what's happening in reality. So, yeah, I know it's really hard, and there's so many people that are struggling, and I will certainly pray for you, and I'll pray for everyone else that's been interacting with me here. But yeah, there's a lot going on, and it causes a lot of anxiety for a lot of people, and it's scary. And prayer really keeps me grounded, I feel. But, also finding finding your way to help others. That's really what gives people some ease in regards to all of this. I mean, I use this YouTube channel as this is kind of my therapy, being able to just come here to the park every morning, sit and talk, make a video. Yeah. So, I mean, that's all I've got. I'm not going to, I don't know anything about you, so I don't know what other advice I could give you, but yeah, that's what I got. Next question. I, 17 male, feel like my parents don't understand me or anything about my life. My goals are different than theirs, and I feel like I will never live up to their expectations. What do I do? Ah, man. That's a kind of like I just said. I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your parents. I don't know anything about your situation. If you could tell me a little bit more, I might have better advice. But, I mean, you're 17, so that means you're almost 18, probably. And you've got to realize that you're about to be considered a legal adult. And once you're a legal adult, you're going to have to take control of your life and do what you need to do to make your life better. But like I said, I don't know you, and I don't know really any context of your situation, so that's really hard for me to answer. You said my goals are different than theirs, and I feel like I'll never live up to their expectations. A lot of young people feel that way about their parents. And sometimes their parents have unreasonable expectations, and other times their parents do have reasonable expectations, and it's being interpreted wrong by the young person. And I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just saying, in my own life, we have a teenager, and she is really struggling with life right now, and we are doing everything we can to help her get through, the difficulties of being a teenager. And it's almost like she just completely ignores all of our advice and does things the absolute hardest way possible. And it's hard as a parent to watch your child do this, because you are like, you're not acting logically. Why are you not acting logically? But when you're a teenager, there is no logic. You're just in a wild frenzy of, hormones and craziness, and requires a lot of patience for a parent. But for you, I'm not saying that your parents have totally reasonable expectations, just because I don't know. But you're almost an adult, and you're going to have to hold yourself accountable for your actions and for what you are going to do with your life. So try as hard as you can to be a good person, be a moral person, and put expectations for yourself that are reasonable but push you. You want to be pushed still. So, yeah, I don't know if that's good advice or not, but that's all I've got for you without knowing any context of the situation. So thank you so much, though, for being here. I appreciate it. Next one. I came to your channel expecting Orthodox Christian content, but you don't seem Orthodox at all. What are you even doing here? I made the mistake of my first couple of videos really leaning heavily into Orthodoxy. And then I start talking about some of my own crazy ideas that don't necessarily align with the Orthodox canon, and I pissed a bunch of people off. And I've had these people message me on various platforms to tell me that I'm a terrible, Christian and whatnot. And I know. I know I'm a terrible Christian. You don't have to remind me. I try my best, but, Christianity is a hard life. And I'm just doing what I can. I have kind of realized recently that I just want to help guide people through modernity and possibly out of modernity. That's my goal. My goal is to get people away from modernity and kind of give people this roadmap on how to escape and how to rebuild culture and family and community away from all this. So that's something I'm working on. But yeah, orthodoxy, I mean, if you've watched all of my videos, you will see kind of where my mind is going. I don't know what video you saw that made you think that I'm just going to be providing Orthodox Christian content, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'm not giving you Orthodox Christian content, but please don't expect that, because I am a little crazy and unhinged sometimes, and I don't fit really with orthodoxy perfectly, so you'll have to deal with that. Next question, are the concepts of good and evil are the concepts of good and evil able to be clearly defined? If not, doesn't this blur the line between objective and subjective? I don't expect anyone is going to believe everything the way I see it. So in that way, everything is kind of subjective. I personally believe there is an absolute good and an absolute evil, and everything else in between is a spectrum. So are the lines of objective and subjective blurred? I mean, of course they're blurred in the middle, because you have some people that think that, like, you know, murder is great. And obviously that's not the case. But some people wholeheartedly believe that that's great. So to me, that's objectively bad. But to them, it's objectively good. So, you know, yeah, it's all very much blurred. But I think general realm-wide morality is known to everybody. And unless you have some severe mental rewiring, I think most people recognize that there is good and evil, and recognize when something's good and recognize when something's bad. So I believe that that is an objective truth. There is objective morality, you could say. But yeah, there's also crazies thrown in the mix. So yeah, it is all kind of blurred. I don't know if that answers what you were asking, but that's what I gathered from that. Final question, are you a fascist? You seem like one. This is my favorite question, and I wanted to save this for the last, because the person that asked this had commented on some other things, and I think they actually do believe that I am a fascist. Whatever your definition of fascism is probably not right. I can just go ahead and tell you that, judging by what other words I've seen from you. The interesting thing about where we are currently is that this goes very much hand in hand with what just happened to Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is the most moderate of people that I've seen, as far as, like, you know, people that are out and about having semi-celebrity status. He's incredibly moderate. He's always willing to talk, always willing to debate. And the most extreme thing about him is that he's a Christian and believes in God. That's the extent of his extremity, I guess you could say. And people somehow decided that he was a fascist. And when the left calls you a fascist, what they're doing is justifying violence against you, because they think, oh, this is a fascist. Nobody wants a fascist here, so it's perfectly acceptable to take him out. That's what they are thinking. That's insane thinking, and that's dangerous thinking, and that's fascist thinking. That is the great irony of all of this. So, am I a fascist? To you, I am very much a fascist, because if you think Charlie Kirk is a fascist, I am so much further to the right than Charlie Kirk is. So, if you're going to say that and accuse me of being a fascist, nothing I'm going to be able to say is going to change your mind about that. So, you also said I seem like one. How? Tell me how. I'm open to hearing what you have to say, how I seem like a fascist. I try to think I'm a pretty understanding person. Yeah, I might be leaning a little into the race issue right now. I do my best to not even talk about the J question, because that's a way to get your channel into trouble. But yeah, if you talk about any of that stuff, you're considered a fascist by the left. And then you have groups like Anti-Fascist Action, who are clearly the ones doing the fascist things. You know, it's an upside down world. Everything is inverse and everything is stupid. So this is what I want to escape from. This is what I want to get away from. And the only way that we're actually going to make any progress getting away from this is for a national divorce. There is like half of the country that can't get along with the other half of the country right now. So that ties into my first question. That's something that's got to happen at some point. And yeah, I think that's the only reasonable solution. So anyway, that was kind of a long one. We're at almost 50 minutes. Thank you so much for being here, all of you, all of my new subscribers. Welcome. My Q&A videos are going to be kind of an interesting documentation about how my opinions change, because I feel like I'm able to hold multiple different viewpoints in my head at the same time. And maybe that's a gift, maybe that's a curse. But I lean into different things depending on the day, you know. So I hope you found this beneficial in some way or another. If you did, great, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. And if it didn't, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. You all are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderfully blessed day today. Got more videos coming down the pipeline, so stay tuned. God bless you.